So today we have on Tanji Johnson, who is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy. Tanji served as a minority enrollment officer for the Academy and as an aircraft maintenance officer. Upon separating from the Air Force, Tanji earned her professional status as a top fitness competitor, earning 11 professional titles as an IFBB fitness professional, with 4 Arnold Classic titles over a period of 18 years. During this time, Tanji also starred on NBC's American Gladiators as Stealth. Like I said, we should have led with that one. Tanji has always shared her knowledge and skill leading and coaching other athletes. Tanji leads Team Prodigy, a physique competition team, and promotes the NPC Tanji Johnson Classic and judges amateur and pro bodybuilding shows. Tanji continues her work in all of these areas, as well as running a functional medicine and chiropractic clinic with her husband, health coaching, and speaking at leadership conferences. Tanji, wow. Thank you so much for chatting with us. We're so excited. And we were just talking a little bit before we started recording about this weird connection that we have with some of our previous guests and some of the other people we know through kind of that leadership growth mindset evolution that's occurring right now. And I would just like to hear first off how Lexi came to know you. It's no surprise to me because Lexi is definitely in that echelon of leadership mindset. So Lexi, how did you guys meet?
I met Tanji, like 2012. I had moved back to the States from Canada, and I had done one fitness show up in Canada, and I wanted to do more down here. Actually, it might have been like 2010, but I found Tanji because she was coaching at the time and seemed like the most qualified in the area, and got on her team. And then Tanji coached me for a couple different seasons. And even when I moved to Vegas, you coached me, and just really great leadership. I've always really enjoyed her leadership style, and, sort of no nonsense, and here's what you need to do to get it done, and just always being there. And then we developed a friendship after that.
That's great. Tanji, so when Lexi came to you, was this your first show, Lex, or where were you at in terms of your bodybuilding career?
I don't know if you can call it a career, but it was my second show.
Oh, okay.
I had done one up in Canada.
Awesome. And Tanji, we also learned that we have a few people in common, including one of our previous guests, Matt Damyancic. So that was one of our most listened to and watched episodes.
Wow.
How do you know Matt?
So I know Matt because we went to the Air Force Academy together. And actually, I listened to the podcast you guys just had with just you and Lexi, and I heard somebody mention his name, and I thought, interesting, like, could that be the same Matt? So then I went back to his podcast, and I'm looking at his picture like, okay, I know I haven't seen him in probably 10 or 15 years. We all age differently, but I just didn't recognize him. And then I looked at his eyes and I thought, that's Matt. And then I listened to the podcast and I thought, that is definitely Matt. So super, super great. It was great to listen to him and hear what's going on with him.
That's awesome. And another one of the connections through the Air Force Academy is former, I think she's retired, but Lieutenant Colonel Janelle McCauley, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I just saw Janelle. It was actually just less than a week ago. We were in Annapolis together.
That's great. What were you guys doing in Annapolis?
So they had the Naval Academy Leadership Conference, and Dr. McCauley was one of their keynote speakers. And as a keynote, she got to have a panel of speakers to help support basically the topic, which is creating a winning culture. And so she had me on as a panelist, as well as a Navy SEAL commander. And then we had an Olympic volleyball athlete. And so that's why we got to be together. And I have to say, I'm super proud of Dr. McCauley, Janelle, because we cheered together at the Air Force Academy. So I know her from the Academy as well. And literally just 4 years ago, I was at I'm showing how old I am, 20-year Academy reunion. And she was there visiting because she's 1 year behind me. And she was just getting out of the Air Force, just getting into this mindset space. Now, she was the first officer to integrate basically mindset coaching and training within her organization. But after retiring, she wanted to pursue that as a career. And so I just remember her asking me about, speaking and just getting started. And 4 years later, I mean, I'm so proud of her because she's totally transforming and blowing up this space. And so it was really, I told her that. I was like, this is coming full circle. We just talked about this 4 years ago, and now you're inviting me as your guest, to the Naval Academy to speak. And I just think that's amazing.
It is amazing. It's so cool. And I would love to talk about a little bit more about, because it seems like the Air Force Academy and these military academies, I mean, such an ingrained part of the culture there is leadership. These are going to be
Right.
young officers. And so I would love to hear a little bit about your experience at the Air Force Academy and kind of that transformation that occurs. And then, your thoughts on mentors that you came across in that process as well.
It's funny. I don't think I internalized it when I was there. I mean, we knew we were going to, a military institution to be trained to be leaders of America. But when you're like 17 years old, what does that really mean to you, right? So I don't think I really thought about it. But now looking back, I have these aha moments that, yes, it was absolutely transformational development, because the Air Force Academy, as well as all of the military academies, are basically leadership labs. They're leadership laboratories, right? And so as I talk about how I used the leadership training that I learned at the academy into my fitness team, Say Fitness, and what I did as a coach, I didn't even realize that I was paralleling what I learned. But I look back and I just want to describe the structure a little bit, because when most people go to college, they think about their freshman, sophomore, junior, senior years a little bit differently than we do. So if you imagine that we are a leadership laboratory and everything has a purpose, every single thing we're taught and that we do, every opportunity, every experience is intentional and literally a part of a training environment. So when we are freshmen, we are learning to be followers. You are the basic cadet and you're learning to be a follower. And that was very important, because if you think about it, the type of cadet and students that the academies attract, I mean, they were attracting everybody that was at the top of their class, valedictorian, football captain, student body president, really good SAT and ACT scores. And so everybody came in there with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and an ego. And that is no way to start off being a part of a team. And so I remember just the humility of learning, like, nobody cares about all that. Nobody cares about who you think you are, what you can do. We're starting from scratch. And I mean, everything from shaving the guys' their heads off. And I remember, I have short hair now. Lexi knows I've not had short hair in 20 years, but probably because I was traumatized from what the Air Force did to me. But I knew we had to cut our hair going into the academy. And so that was about the time Bodyguard came out with Whitney Houston. And so I was sporting that, right? I showed up and I was like, ooh, I look so cute, looking like Whitney Houston. Yeah, I went into that barbershop and they're like, no, you are too cute. We're going chop, chop, chop. And just everything from just your identity getting stripped to you and you become a follower. And so the whole purpose in that freshman year was to learn how to be a part of a team and how to follow. Because later on, people don't talk about this, but followership is a component of leadership. In order to lead, you have to be ready to follow the mission, right? Follow a chain of command. So followership is very important. And for all of us cocky students coming in, we need it to be broken down, starting at the bottom, and understand what it means to follow first before we could lead. So again,
Tanji, do you think that at that age you understood that that was what was happening, or you just sort of were like, this is the process and I'm committed to finishing?
I don't think we understood it in the beginning, right? Because you come into like most people that go there as a freshman cadet, all they're thinking about is, I'm awesome because I got in and I'm gonna fly fighter pilots, right? You just think about the beginning and the end. You don't really think about the process that you're about to go through. So I wouldn't say that we thought about that in the beginning, but midway through, it started to make sense. Because again, they're telling you why they are breaking you down. They're telling you why they don't care about what you've done up until this point, and that you are now a part of a team. And that's what they ingrain in you. So I do believe that we learned that throughout the process, but I definitely didn't know that going in. So that's freshman year. Then sophomore year, you become the trainer. So you are responsible for the mentorship and empowering the freshmen and empowering them with the skills of what it takes to do what they're doing. And I remember that was neat because I remember when I became a sophomore, I thought, wow, like they're putting me in charge of the freshmen. First of all, I was like, yes, I don't have to get, you're not the one at the bottom of the totem pole anymore. But I remember that responsibility of, because it's fresh in our mind, I'm the best person to be able to train the people that are coming behind me. And even later in my leadership as a professional fitness competitor, I realized that the higher I got in my professional career, the more difficult it was for me to lead people who were brand new because I couldn't relate anymore. That was like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so it was very important that I developed a leadership structure within my organization with coaches who were just maybe a year away from going through what my new girls were going through. And so when I was a sophomore, what were you going to say, Lexi?
Just that, I mean, that really makes me think about, I assume it would probably be the same in any business, but in law enforcement, how it often seems like the people that are most in charge are the farthest removed from what's actually happening on the street. So having like the ability to have some mentors that are a little bit closer to that experience, I think is important.
Right. So that was really amazing to be to be given that responsibility to train the freshmen. So then when I became a junior supervises the trainer. So you got the followers and then the trainers who train the followers. And then now as a junior, you supervise the trainers who are training the followers. And so I remember in my junior year, I actually applied. So if you think about the different organizational levels, we were a big cadet wing. And then we had 4 big groups of about 1,000 cadets. And in each group, there was 10 squadrons, right? So I ended up applying to be the wing training NCO, which means I was in charge of all the training for the entire academy as a junior because I worked for wing staff. So it's kind of like I worked at the corporate level, but not on the unit level. So I was helping policy and with overseeing. So as a supervisor, we look at what's happening to hold people accountable to make sure that they are doing the mission. And so that's when I got that experience of having to really listen, pay attention, foster that accountability. And then when I became a senior, that was the ultimate leadership position because that's when we all became commanders. And at the time, I remember being a group commander. So when you think of the entire cadet wing, there's 4 groups of 1,000 people. And I actually was a squadron commander. So I was in charge of my own herd of 100 people. And so at that point, as a leader, your job is to create the vision and help manifest that vision and manifest what culture everybody's operating at. So I just thought that was really neat. I look back at my academy experience and it was like, there's the senior who creates the vision, who is leading the supervisor, who's supervising the trainer, who's training the follower, right? And so as a cadet, we got to experience that at 17, 18, 19 years old. So by the time I got out and was thrown over to Fairchild Air Force Base, and here I am, an aircraft maintenance officer in charge of 200 people at the age of 22, I was ready. Not like perfect, but I was ready because that was my college experience, was basically being a guinea pig going through this leadership laboratory. So that was something that I really grew to appreciate later, looking back at how leadership is really complex and there's different levels of leadership. And it's important, to be able to have experience in each of those areas.
Wow. Yeah, that's what a great experience. I feel like, if a lot of different career paths had a 4-year academy, we would see, I think we would see a vast improvement and also an incredibly transformed efficacy, like the way things are operated. Yeah, very impressive. I wish I had that experience for sure.
I know, hearing you speak about it, I'm like, that would have been a great thing to go through. I think for any kid, but you can use it in so many different aspects of your life. And it's not surprising to me that, all these people that are such great leaders now that we're talking to in this aspect actually went through that experience,
The other thing that it does for you too is it presents this awareness to you, and you have this cognizance about leadership, and
Right.
the kind of the converse of that is that you can smell bad leadership coming from a mile away too. You're like you can sense it, and I think for a lot of other people, it's very, they know they don't like their situation, they know they don't like their chain of command, whatever, even if it's in the private sector, but they don't know how to articulate what's wrong. And so that I guess that kind of leads me to a question for you, which is, have you had some experiences with some poor leadership styles, and what did you learn from that? And were you able to, take anything positive from having exposure to poor leadership?
I remember one of my first assignments was over in Spokane at Fairchild Air Force Base, and it was aircraft maintenance. And maybe I was fortunate because my father was enlisted in the Army, and he is probably the first pivotal person in my life that imparted any kind of leadership on me. And I'll get off on a tangent because I think this is a really cool story. I remember when I was in ninth grade that my dad sat me down and said, because he retired in South Carolina in a neighborhood that had it was a decent neighborhood. I don't know how we got there because we had probably the cheapest house in the whole neighborhood. So I went to school with a bunch of rich people, but we were not rich. And my dad, I remember him telling me, empowering me and letting me know, hey, we have 5 kids, we are lower middle income, we have no money for you guys to go to school. But you're going to school with a bunch of people whose parents own businesses and they drive cars to school, and they're probably all going to college because their parents have money to send them to school. I'm telling you right now, you're in ninth grade, you got 4 years, girl, go get it, go get it. You got 4 years, but we don't have any money, just letting you know. And I remember I was so scared, like, holy crap, oh my gosh, this is on me, right? I'm responsible now for my future. And for me at the time, being college educated was a big part of that. And so that's all I needed to hear, because after that, everything I did was with that vision. I know where I need to go. I know what help I'm not going to have. So I need to create that. I knew I needed to win a scholarship. So how do I win a scholarship? Okay, I'm going to need to play a sport and go out for student body leadership and get some activities ranked up. I remember even starting a dance team and making myself captain because I knew that would also give me more leadership points. I mean, it was really fun. I love hip hop, but my dad was probably the first example of really good leadership, because I appreciated that he created that vision for me and that he empowered me to be self-sufficient and to reach within myself to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. Now, I do remember being in the Air Force and mainly hearing complaints from some of my troops about other leaders. When I came into my squadron and they found out I was an academy grad, I mean, they were just already like, "Oh, we got another academy grad," because these officers think they know everything. They think they're hot shit, so they're coming in here just changing everything, and they don't know anything. And you know what? They were right. Like I knew nothing. Right? I went to school for 6 months to learn about the KC-135 and basic management principles. But as far as that unit that had been there for years with NCOs that had worked there for decades, I'm coming in there and now I'm in charge, right? So I remember my dad warning me and basically teaching me, you better value your enlisted personnel because they will be the reason you succeed or fail, period. And I remember that being very powerful. So when I came in, I remember how important it was to validate them and make sure I recognized them for what they knew and showed them and empowered them that, hey, I have to make the decision. I'm the one that is going to report to the colonel, make the decision, let him know what's going on, but I'm relying on you. I need you, and I need you to do your job, which you're already doing. But if I can help you do your job even better, then I know you're going to take care of me. And it was just that teamwork of, I'm going to take care of you, you're going to take care of me. There's no ego here. There's just the mission. And so I would say some of the examples of the poor leadership was when I felt like the ego was more important than the mission.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, just a kind of a story about you, Tanji, that I experienced with your leadership that reminds me of that story with your dad was I had just, I can't remember what I placed, but I lost a competition and I was pretty devastated. And, after dieting for so long, you have very little capacity to be rational. And I remember seeing you and you kind of were like, well, how do you feel? And we talked a little bit and you were like, oh yeah, you just weren't there yet, but here are the steps we're going to get you there. And it was very, matter of fact, you didn't lie to me that, oh, you should have won. You should have, you look the best up there, anything like that. It was just, yeah, here's the reality of it. You weren't there and here's what we need to do to get you there. And that snapped me out of all those feelings I was have so quickly of just like,
the emotional response.
yeah, I don't, it was just like perfect for me in that moment of like, all right, you didn't lie to me. You didn't like feed into that feeling of like despair or frustration or anything. It was just, very matter of fact. And it kind of reminds me of what your dad did with you. So
yeah.
And that's what a great like rep to have. I know it sucks so bad when you don't, when you fail, but without that experience that you had, like Lexi, the way that you reacted to that will become your new norm. And then when I watch you respond, that becomes my new norm when I F something up royally, or I have an issue and I fail at something, it happens, but I think it's what a great experience to build those fundamentals of resiliency.
And I think, I think that's a theme that I'd like to hear you talk about, Tanji, is because I see you as an incredibly resilient person. To be in the career of a fitness professional for as long as you were. And, Callie and I were talking a little bit about this prior to you getting on. It's a sport that can be really devastating to people because you are being judged on how you look, how you present yourself, and you can take that very personally. And I think it takes an incredible amount of resiliency to say, okay, well, I didn't win this one, but you know what, I'll be on stage next year. So can you talk a little bit about like, how in the hell you did that? And then also if any of your prior experiences through the academy or through your father or other leadership people in your life kind of helped you with that resilient attitude.
Absolutely. The first thing it makes me think about is how, this just breaks my heart, but I was at the Naval Academy and after we got done talking, because one of the things I spoke on is how important knowing your why is and anything that you do, right? And I heard you guys have talked about that quite a bit, like knowing your why, knowing your purpose, and having a very, very clear vision. And so this guy came up to me and he said, ma'am, I'm struggling with something. I feel like I don't know what my why is. And I know that is so hard because when you're 18, 19 years old, you have, you've had some experiences, but you haven't like lived this 20-year experience where you have all these things you can go back and look back to. And so I think that's a very trying time for a lot of young people, that they just need to dive into whatever experiences that they're having and reflect on those and learn from that. And so one of my early experiences actually at the Air Force Academy, I admit when I went there, because you may not have a sense of confidence with who you are because you don't even know who you are. So you are creating who you are when you're that young person as you go. And I remember idolizing my older brother because he was a senior there when I was a freshman. Everybody looked up to him. And he was a part of the Cadet Honor Guard. And the Cadet Honor Guard is the most militant organization / club at the academy, because while everybody else is playing football, doing intramural sports, we were, I can say this now because it's not like this anymore, but it's like we were the one group that was kind of getting hazed every day after school, like literally push-ups in the snow, 5-mile runs with our, M1 Garand and Kevlar on, and we're getting yelled at the whole time. It's kind of like basic training extended for a year. Like people were like, you guys are so weird. Like anybody that raised their hand to do that. But if you made it through that year, which let's say there was 50 people that started, there would be like 18 to 24 at the end because people would wash out. So think like Navy SEALs, but just, pre-Navy SEALs, you're just thinking like, okay, what's the hardest thing you could do at the academy? And everybody would say, oh, honor guard, like who would volunteer for that? And so that was something I wanted to do because I wanted the honor of being able to do color guard and flag detail and funeral detail. So we were like the drill and ceremonies team. If you've ever seen those precision military drill teams where they're marching with the rifles and they're flipping them in the air and they're 100% precise, that's what I was on, the cadet honor guard. And so that was the first really hard thing I had to do. I remember I was really fit, but I was not a great runner. So the fact that they would make us go on these formation runs, and I was also the shortest one, they'd always put the tall guys in the front and the short person in the back. And I was always falling out of runs. And I mean, I have trauma from it where they're always like, Johnson, get your ass up here, move your ass, and it was just like always getting yelled at and just physically feeling like a failure just every day after school. And I remember after the first couple of weeks, I just remember like I would be so tired when I got back to my room. I was mentally and emotionally drained from getting yelled at. Like I said, remember when you're a freshman, they're trying to break you down. So if they see any weakness, physical, mental, are you crying? Johnson, you can't keep up. Are you going to be the weak link of the team? Everything that you can think of. It was like, it felt very verbally abusive, right? But there, again, this is a stressful situation. They're creating stress. Remember, I didn't think about this until much, much later, but I'm like, okay, if you're going to be a fighter pilot, I hope you can deal with stress. Because when your airplane gets shot up, you better be ready to respond with calm, cool, and know exactly what to do. We can go into another story because my other classmate is Captain or Colonel Kim Campbell, and she's known as the killer chick because her A-10 got shot up and she landed the plane safely. So she's super famous for that. But it just goes back to reminding me why they make us go through what we did. So that was the hardest thing that I did there. And probably 3 weeks into it, every day I thought about quitting. And then one day it just hit me and I said, okay, that's like the worst 3 hours of my day every day. But every day I get back to my room and I got through it. And then I go to sleep and I try to do my homework and I get up and I do my next day. And then I go back out there and I get mentally and physically beat down again. And every day that I did that, I was realizing, what am I scared of? I already have what it takes. Like I've survived, like I didn't die. When you think about that Asian guy on the meme that says, but did you die? Right? It just makes me, I think about that and I'm like, well, no, I didn't die. Like I'm going to run and they're going to make me do push-ups and my muscles are probably going to fail. And I was getting a lot more mentally strong because I knew they were going to yell at me. I knew they were going to tell me I was a piece of shit and all this stuff. Right. And so I just got stronger. And so the first thing that I realized is that I had grit, and grit is a combination of passion and perseverance. So I was very passionate. I wanted to be one of the best. I wanted to be a badass. I wanted to be tough. So I was willing to endure it. And the fact that I did it and I did it every day, after like 2 months, I'm like, oh, shoot, I got this. And I just knew I was going to persevere because perseverance is a choice. And so I was able to transform that fear and just accept it. Like, I'm going to suffer. And so take that attitude, that grit, that strength of perseverance now and translate that and transfer that to my career as a fitness competitor. The diet was hard. The gymnastics was hard. The weightlifting was hard. It was all hard. But again, I knew that if I wanted the ultimate goal of the prize, and that was to be the best fitness athlete, to develop a legacy, to win that number one, this is what it was going to take. And it was going to require some suffering. And I'm thinking, I've suffered before. I've suffered through my childhood. I suffered in honor guard. I've suffered through a marathon. I got this, right? And so to me, that was the key to my perseverance, was having done it and then embracing that and making it confident, knowing I can choose that again and again and again.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much good stuff there. Perseverance is a choice. I love that. Fantastic. And, it reminds me, it kind of rings to a similar sentiment of, at least in law enforcement, maybe just in terms of the, when we're dealing with physical encounters that are very difficult and that are, oftentimes exhausting. And, it just reminds me of some of the themes that we've discussed before. When you've trained to that capacity for years leading up to whatever the hardest day at work will be, you think back to those times and like, this is why I did it, because I've been here before. I've gone through these hardships. I've experienced this before and came out on the other side. And what's more is your ability to think through those things. And like you were coaching up Lexi, you know, is as you deal with these setbacks, your mind is constantly, all right, calibrating to now what? Okay,
Right.
this didn't work. Now what? And so I think that's also a good transferable skill in terms of law enforcement is, you know, we ran up into this difficulty. Now what? This isn't working. Now what? And it's not always physical. Sometimes it's a verbal thing, right? Maybe you need to talk to my partner, Lexi, because you don't like this. And that's happened many times. So
Right. It makes me, and you know, and it's funny because Lexi has talked to us, especially in our group, the coaches and coffee, and told us about how mentally exhausting it's got to be as a police officer, especially in our current climate, to get chastised and verbally abused and harassed on a regular basis. And I heard you guys say in a previous podcast that sometimes when officers are not at their best and they make a mistake or they have a bad day or they're rude or abrasive, you got to wonder, like, what have they put up with, right? And it's those similar mental skills of what could help them get through that is, like you said, tapping into that. I know this is going to happen. People don't like us. I'm going to expect that type of treatment, and I'm going to learn how to embrace it, see it for what it is, and stay focused on the mission. And that's kind of what I had to do when I was on honor guard. Every day I went out to practice. I'm like, these people are not here to be my friends. They're not going to be nice to me. They're trying to make me tougher, and they'll spend the whole year. And what was crazy is at the end of the year when we were recognized, it was like they went from like enemy to brother immediately. All those guys that were in my face yelling at me, like all of a sudden I was their sister, and nobody could do anything to me, and they had my back. And I just remember, like, my eyes were so blown away when I thought, like, so you really didn't hate me? Because I mean, you really seemed like you hated me.
I like that. I'm going to start thinking about this. Like every time I'm being like, you're just here to make me stronger.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that.
yeah. And then Lexi, one day you'll reach your graduation and they'll put their arm around you and say, see, this is what it was all for. We're friends now. We're good.
I somehow doubt that, but
Yeah, that may not happen to you guys, unfortunately. You know, I wish.
No, that's great though. I mean, that still serves the same purpose that just training resilience. It's just that's an awesome sort of perspective. So, Lex, questions? I got a few.
yeah, go for it, Callie. I've got lots, but go for it.
I'm just curious, Tanji, I mean, not that I'm trying to get a life hack here or anything, but I'm curious what characteristics, you touched on perseverance and a few other things, but if you could, I don't know if you've thought about the model or like the pillars of great leadership, just they might have, I'm sure they've expressed those in your Air Force Academy training, but I think
Right.
as you sort of have life experience, those have a tendency to evolve. So I'm just curious if you have any characteristics that you would prescribe for the utmost leadership.
You know, it's funny. I think it's important for people to know who they are, right? And so there's this process of self-discovery, like I was talking about when you're in your 20s, you know, it's important that you take the time to figure that out and figure out who are you, what are your strengths, what do you believe, what are your habits? Because, you know, when people say, like, if you think you can, you will, and if you think you can't, you won't. So I think that's really huge for people to figure out who they are and work on developing what their character is going to be. So the first thing in leadership to me is you can't lead anybody if you don't know who you are. So that's the first thing I think it's important is self-discovery, know who you are and why you want to do things. The second thing, and this is actually turning into more modern leadership with wellness, but the second part I think is take care of yourself. As a leader, you need to know who you are and you need to be able to take care of yourself, because how do you lead and take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself? And so, like Janelle, like with Dr. McCauley, you know, when she tells her story, she tells a story of how she was a mother, squadron commander, pilot, and she had all this immense responsibility, but then she wasn't taking care of herself, you know, not getting enough sleep, not eating well, not exercising, not managing stress. And so that is, I totally believe that impacts your efficiency and your ability to serve as a leader. So I think when I think of leadership as a whole, I think of know who you are, take care of yourself, and then be able to serve and take care of others.
That's great.
And I love that idea of like, you are serving others. You're not
Mhm.
necessarily there to like further your own agenda, but you are there to serve others. And I think that's a huge part of leadership, is putting aside your own expectations or your own ideas of what it should be. And like you said, with your enlisted folk, like relying on them to give you some ideas of what's actually happening on their level,
Yeah.
and moving from there, instead of, and that's a form of serve, like you're serving them because you are
Mhm.
listening to them, and you're getting that ground level idea. I think too much we see people that go into a leadership position with their idea of what I know is best, and we're going to go in this direction, without actually taking those, serving the people below them, or serving the ideas of what they know, being on the ground level of something.
Well, another example it makes me think of, where if you forget your role as a leader, sometimes you can get caught up in a different aspect. So I think about like the different positions and roles I've served. So I think about myself as when I am a MPC promoter. So when I'm a contest promoter, I'm the person that's promoting the event and putting it on. But I am such a detail oriented person that when it comes to getting the job done, even though I have people in place to do the job, I wouldn't say I'm a micromanager, but maybe really close, right? Because I'll never forget, I hired my husband and a couple of guys, and I call them the GSD crew. They're the Get Shit Done crew, right? And so their job is to go over to the venue, make sure the bathrooms have all the plastic, the chairs are covered up, the signage is put up. They're supposed to be getting all that stuff ready. So, and this is happening at the same time that competitors are checking in and registering at the hotel. Where do you think I usually am?
Um, Everywhere.
Well, initially, I would end up going over to the venue because I would be concerned
Yeah.
and just hyper focused on, okay, are you guys doing it right? Like, did you guys do what I wanted you to do? And I'm double checking and all of that. And I remember, and this is so perfect because the guy that I hired to be in charge, I don't know if you remember Lily, but her husband Travis is a Marine. And I remember, he would say, LT, he still calls me LT. I got this. Like, you need to go over to the hotel because this is your show. It's the Tanji Johnson Classic, right? A lot of people are choosing to do this event because they believe in you and what your brand stands for. You should be there shaking each of their hands, meeting them, creating that vision, permeating that vision for your show. And I remembered, like, oh, there you go. I just missed it. There you go. I just blew it, right? Like, totally just got so focused on the logistics of my event instead of being the leader, because I was, and then when I did that the following year, and that's what I said, I was like, hey, I'm not even going over there. Just send me a text, let me know when everything's done on the checklist, but I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm going to the hotel and I'm meeting the people that are doing my show, and I'm going to make sure they feel important. They feel that they understand that I'm grateful, that just in me pouring into them, getting them excited, that in itself is going to be a servant leadership that they're going to appreciate more so than me being at the venue, making sure it's okay when I've already got people in place to make sure it's okay. And I fail in that area all the time because I forget sometimes what matters more because I'm big into the details.
Yeah, I work for another company called Power Athlete, and my boss used to always tell us we need to learn to manage the experience, which
Mm,
is he's got people hired to do everything that you're talking about, all of the like
mm,
all of the kind of logistical, the get shit done crew. Um,
mm-hmm.
but our job is to manage the experience of the people there, and
Yeah,
that everyone there gets to walk away with a story or something that has to do with you. And so,
yeah.
so I can definitely appreciate that. And it's got to be difficult. Your name's on the product essentially, so it's got to be difficult to just trust that your folks will get it taken care of. But in the end, all those little details that the Get Shit Done crew are responsible for, even if it's not perfect, the thing is
Yeah,
people are going to walk away. If you manage the experience, they're going to walk away with that, not, oh,
right.
I didn't get my, I didn't get a protein bar in my gift bag or whatever, you know? So I don't know. You might have somebody that's upset about that, but that won't be the big thing. It'll be like, I didn't get to talk to Tanji one time, you know?
Right.
And I really
Exactly.
see that as a huge part of leadership of like, first of all, making sure the people that are under you doing whatever project you're doing have the expectations and the training to get it done.
Yeah.
You know, trusting that they'll get it done. And then after everything is said and done, debriefing the experience of like, all right, we trained for this, we did it. There were some areas we succeeded. There are some areas that we could have done better. Let's talk about all of those things. And I think that that's really important because things are always going to go wrong. There's just no way that things are going to be perfect. But you kind of have to let people make those mistakes in order to learn how to be better, you know?
Yep.
And that's where that debrief at the end, you know, for lack of a better word, that going over all those things is like, yeah, okay, I see where I messed up. And that failure, that mess up is a better teacher than anything else. You know, I could do everything exactly the way that my coach or my sergeant or my, you know, leader on a project tells me to do it. I could do it 100% the way they want it to be done. And it'll be okay at the end because it was done the way they wanted it to be done. But I don't know that I'm going to develop myself under that type of leadership style. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a really good chance that in a lot of situations, if you give someone the broad goal, here's what needs to happen, that person, like Lexi many times has helped us at our Power Athlete events.
Yeah.
If you just give them the goal, sometimes they're way better at doing it than the way that you have tried to get them to do it. But just to switch gears a little bit, Tanji, one thing you haven't brought up one time is the fact that you're a female and that leadership as a female, I don't know, there are some females that feel like there's this huge mountain to climb. I don't know what your experience with that is. I think that coming from my background, it's somewhat similar in some ways in that my dad was a Marine Corps colonel, and he never made me feel like that wasn't an option for me to reach some sort of like, it was always encouraging me to be, whenever they asked for volunteers for whatever it is, you need to be the first person to raise your hand. You need to, if something scares you, you need to volunteer for it, that kind of mentality. And so when something scares me, that's kind of what I've like leaned into, including leadership positions. It's like, shit, now I have to, come up with a plan. But I'm just curious, what, as a female in this, and as a Black female, at the Air Force Academy, I'm sure you were probably minority of minorities. And I'm just curious what your experience was there, if you ran into any walls.
Well, just for a matter of perspective, so there's usually maybe 1,100 cadets that graduate in a class. In my class, there was only 8 Black females out of that 1,100 to 1,000 that graduated. So that's how much of a minority I felt like I was. Now, I will say this, now that I'm 46, right? And I've had multiple careers, and I've transitioned from the military to like an athletic career to now a business career. As I look back and you ask that question, I will say I remember in the beginning when, again, I hadn't accomplished much, that I absolutely felt like I had something to prove. And looking back at my self-discovery, this is one of my most regrettable mistakes, is looking back and purposely suppressing my femininity because I thought I needed to in order to succeed in this male-dominating environment, right? And so there's this transformation that happens where in the beginning, again, this is where that self-discovery is important. Know who you are, know what you're good at, know what your strengths are, look at your beliefs. And if they don't serve you, you have to shift them and shift your mindset to make sure you change. But yes, I was all about proving myself. And that's why I was doing everything that was hard. I wanted to do anything that was tough because I wanted to be respected. And by the time I graduated, and that happened for me, you know, I was in a lot of great leadership roles. I was very athletic and I was at the top of my game when I graduated. And then I went into aircraft maintenance. And again, I wanted to go in there and I wanted to be respected. So I did everything from leadership by example. I got on the flight line. I wasn't, you know, afraid to get my hands dirty. I would change the engine of the aircraft. And I spent time on the flight line with my guys. And so that happened for me. I just regret feeling like I needed to, you know, not wear makeup or, you know, I was self-conscious about anything that I thought was feminine. And then, you know, and I won't say what this individual said, but I remember one of my troops asking me, you know, why do you try so hard to like not be a woman? And I was like, oh, because I don't want my guys to see me as a woman. I want them to see me as their lieutenant. I want them to see me as their leader. And I remember him saying, there's nothing you can do to stop us from thinking about you as a woman. It doesn't mean we won't respect you. We will respect you, but you're still a woman. And so I remember thinking like, well, what the heck, right? And so I just remember.
Funny. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And the other thing I was going to say, so in addition to figuring out who you are, what do you have to offer, there is, and maybe everyone can't relate to this, but for me, there's a psychological impact when you do not see representation for yourself in successful positions or positions of leadership, right? So yes, I was self-conscious about being Black. I was self-conscious about being a woman, and I felt like I had something to prove, and I felt like I was going to have to work harder. Now, you asked me about my athletic career. It's like Black women are dominating the bodybuilding industry, so I don't feel self-conscious about that at all, right? I feel like, yeah, like, no, yeah, I have no issues there. I know I can be successful there. And now that I've spent 20 years, so to speak, developing my personal brand. So I teach people about personal branding, and it has nothing to do with having a business. It's who are you? If you ask Lexi, hey, tell me about Tanji, what are the top 3 words you would say about Tanji? People, that name is a brand, and people have certain expectations because of who I am, what I've done consistently with my character over the years. But when you're young and starting off, you haven't developed that yet. So I would say, here it is 40 years later, do I feel a certain way about being a woman? Not necessarily, because I've developed my personal brand and now I know who I am, I know what I have to offer, and guess what? So does everybody else. But I will still say that I will struggle in certain areas if there's not a lot of representation. There's just a psychological effect. And so, for example, when I was at the Naval Academy, I don't know if you guys have heard about this young lady, but they've recently had their first Black female brigade commander. Okay, her name is Sydney Barber. She was all over Facebook. I saw her picture a couple months ago, and I found out she was there. And when the cadet said, or the midshipman said, oh yeah, she's here, she's right inside the auditorium, I'm like, can I meet her? You know, I was like totally, I was fangirling her, and I almost felt like I was gonna cry when I was talking to her, because I held a lot of high leadership positions at the Air Force Academy, but I was never the wing commander. She's the brigade commander, which means she's the first Black female to ever be the highest ranking cadet in that entire school. And it's never been done before. And so I think about the pressure she must feel to succeed and to lead. And I think about the weight on her shoulders. And I think about how now, after her, other Black female midshipmen can probably go to that school and say, yeah, it's possible. Yeah, we just had a, Black brigade commander last year. Well, when I was there, I didn't see any of that. That wasn't the case. And so I didn't have that confidence and that security. I had to create it on my own. So when you ask about just what it's been like as a female, it's very difficult in the beginning. And it's difficult anytime there's not that representation, but it's made easier because I've had the time and the experiences to build my personal brand and know what I have to offer.
I have goosebumps from your little story about Sydney too. That's incredible. That's great. Yeah, I that everyone has their own experience, and I think part of it too is as you mature and age, and kind of like you said, when you learn who you are, it just enables you to embrace that and with confidence. And when you have that air of confidence, you're a much more effective leader, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. And you can embrace all those sides of you of like, yeah, right. I am feminine. Sometimes I like to throw on a dress and, do my nails and, but you're still going to know that I can get things done when they need to be done. And, you know, I do think it's a fine line, and especially when you're in a male dominated profession, you know, that is something that I think we as females all think about. Like, you know, I want to be respected. I know you're, you know, there, you can't avoid the fact that I'm a female, but, you know, but, you know, at the end of the day, you got to be who you are and embrace the things that you like to do. And
Exactly.
I think that really resonated with me when you said that too, because I've never viewed, you know, being a female, at least in our line of work, as a negative thing. It definitely, there are negative moments for sure, but I've always
Right.
viewed it as an advantage because we
Yeah.
are few. And so we do sort of, there is if you, especially if you kind of embrace that, you can have
Yeah.
even more of a command presence on scene and that kind of thing,
Right.
because you automatically just stick out a little bit. And
Right.
but I will say, when you said repressing your femininity, that is 100% true. And that, I look back on that and I think there are times when just almost on a daily basis going on patrol, me just thinking about like little things about like, well, I have my nails painted today. Like, I shouldn't have done that. And then I started,
right.
you know, and then you sort of do it more. And then you're kind of like, or maybe, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing, you know, my hair a certain way or whatever, because
Right.
you legitimately, for me, I know that like, shit, I'll just say it, like I would pick one feminine thing that I would do, like whether it be I'd pick the nails one day, or maybe makeup the other day, or maybe I'd do earrings one day, and it's like I'd pick the one thing and make sure I wasn't going over the top. And I know
Right.
that sounds so stupid, but it's just true, because I
Yeah.
think there's that weird pressure, like if I look too girly, I won't garner the respect I deserve. And I don't
Right.
know where that connection is, but I also just think it's
Yeah.
part of it too, maybe, is you don't want distraction from who you are. You know what I mean? I think that
Right.
that's the other part of it too, is I think my brain is thinking, okay, I don't want to distract from the actual you know, what I am, not versus just what I look like. So
Right. Well, you know, it was cool because when I was in Annapolis, I got to go out to dinner with the Navy SEAL commander speaker, and then he invited two of his friends who were actually at Annapolis. One was a former instructor there, and the other one's a former helicopter pilot. And so we had this type of a conversation, and I thought it was really neat that one of the guys said, "That's our problem. Like, seriously, why do you guys need to worry about whether or not you're attractive? It's like, it's our job as men to be able to focus. There's distractions everywhere, whether it's the enemy, a gun coming at you, an attractive woman. Like, that's just an excuse for someone else to not do their job." Like he said, that's our responsibility, is to consider all things as they are in their being and still be able to focus. And I thought, finally, somebody's taking responsibility. Yes, this is great. It's progressive. But I remember thinking like, well, thank you for saying that, because I always thought it was my responsibility to tone myself down for the sake of who's around me, right? Just totally different perspective. It's really neat.
I think these conversations are so important because I mean, I know, I'm sure Callie and me, I have all these things in my head that are going bing, bing, bing. I've had that moment where, you know, like I don't necessarily want my coworkers to know that I competed, because then they'll see pictures of me in like almost no clothing. And, you know, like, do I want them looking at me like that, or do I want them looking at me, you know? But you're right. Like, it's just at the end of the day, you know, it's like you said, it's their responsibility. But I think like these conversations are so important because we end up
Right.
uncovering things
Yeah.
that we all have felt, you know,
Mhm.
but not necessarily talked about. So I
Right.
think, yeah.
I love it.
Tanji, is there anything that's burning on your mind that you want to talk about that maybe we haven't touched on? I mean, I know we could probably talk for hours on this subject, but is there anything that you've been contemplating recently? I know, just coming back from Annapolis, you probably have a lot of stuff going on in your mind too. But is there anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on?
I would say, so in Annapolis, we were talking about creating a winning culture. And the focal point was how we used mindset and mental training. And that is, I'm officially a mindfulness advocate. Like, I'm fascinated by just the study and that space. And it's actually motivated me even going from, so, I did the military and then I did the fitness coaching. And now my husband and I, we basically have a wellness practice. And, I'm basically launching a wellness program, and I've decided to call it Empowered Wellness. And I love that name because to empower means to give power to. And that's why just empowerment, everything empowerment is just, that's 100% what I'm all about. I want people to be empowered. Like I told you about how I was empowered to make changes in my life. And my dad was the first person to step in and show me, like, you have what it takes, you can do this. I want to be able to lead other people to living a life of wellness, but knowing that they have the self-efficacy to do it. And self-efficacy is having that innate, believing that you have the innate ability to change your life and achieve your goals. But I want people to be able to do that in the sphere of wellness. And Lexi, I know you're a big advocate of wellness because that's what you guys are motivated to do with teaching people leadership and transforming the mental health of the other officers and how much that's going to, affect high performance. So when I think of wellness, it's not just nutrition and movement, stress management, mindset. It's all of those things. But the empowered portion of that is teaching people that if you want to have a better life and you want to, here's my tagline, do better, be better, and serve better, right? But it starts with us. So we have to be better by getting well, whatever that looks like. For some people, it means you got to get on top of managing your stress. Other people, that means you've got to eat better, take care of your body. You're gaining weight and getting sick. And over here, you need to sleep more. You're not performing well because of sleep, right? These are all aspects that we have control over. We need to believe that we can, so that again, we can be better and then do better. And then I'm a very transcendent, like, I believe everything goes full circle. If we can be better and do better, then we're going to serve better, and then the world would be better. So I'm excited about that work, and it's kind of in the beginning stages.
I love it. Is there anywhere that people can go to learn more about you, or to learn more about Empowered Wellness, or just kind of following you on Instagram or what have you?
Sure. My Instagram handle is official Tanji Johnson. Like there's somebody out there trying to be me, right?
Imposter.
So I would say official Tanji Johnson. And then our website is it's getting updated, and it'll be up at the end of the week. And it's bridgmanhealthsolutions.com.
Fantastic. Tanji, thank you so much for chatting with us. What a great conversation. And
Thank you.
I hope that we can chat again soon, and you're relatively local, so maybe meet in person sometime.
Oh, are you local too?
Yes. Yeah.
Yay. Well, I just want to say, I want to take a moment. I didn't get to say it in the beginning, but I just want to say thank you, Callie. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you both, not only for having me on the podcast, but I'm thanking you more for your service and for your leadership and how you are impacting your communities. And just when Lexi told me you guys were doing this, I mean, I just got goosebumps because I think it's so important. And I love to see two badass ladies taking charge and just impacting the world with these topics. And I love that you guys are bringing on different guests. And like you said, you want to have all these different perspectives and how it's going to help you grow too.
Well, thanks. We're trying. You
guys are doing great.
We're like in the infancy stage of leadership. So, but we're excited for sure. We're motivated.
Yeah. Right, and really for us, it's getting to hear, I think we both get our cups filled every week when we talk to people, because it's just so motivating. And so, I feel fortunate that this is like a really good excuse to talk to some amazing people and get that motivation,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Tanji.
Thanks, you guys.